Productive Dentist Academy podcast network.
If you are expecting your marketing to just get you patients in the door and you are not paying attention to what's happening as soon as that unhook happens, when it goes from a potential prospect all the way into, okay, now we signed up, we've scheduled, and we're going to walk in that door, you're going to waste thousands of dollars every year, and you're going to be really frustrated. Thanks for tuning into the Everyday Practices Dental podcast. I'm Regan Robertson. My co-host Sara Hansen and I interview real dentists and experts who grow their dental practices using authentic marketing in a way that you can remember, repeat, and use in your own practice to get the patients you deserve. Let's dive in.
Hey, doctors, I want you to think about your waiting room right now. What do you hate? Do you know if it's helping or is it hurting your marketing efforts? Now, sometimes doctors are like, what does my waiting room have to do with the marketing? And I can tell you guys, as a former office manager and branding expert, Regan and I are coming together and we have intentionally micro-mapped the waiting room experience because you guys, we want you to be the best dental marketing practice that you can be. And we want to help give you a clear path to not only maximize your marketing budget, but to help create an environment that builds trust and drives case acceptance. Regan?
Full man. I love it. The first thing that popped into my head is Chin GYN. How many times, doctors, have you heard Chin GYN? Go check them out now, chinGYN.com. They are always recording reels, Insta reels from their waiting room, which is really interesting. So, if you're listening right now, what's the last waiting room that you were in? Can you even think of it? And was it a memorable experience? I think I would have been hard pressed to think of one had I not had Chin in my freaking Instagram. And I see it like all the time. They're always doing reels from there. So I know what to expect. And they focus on holidays a lot. So they've got like holiday decorations up for everything. So I end up seeing that. So regardless of what I'm in, I end up usually seeing that waiting room. And the waiting room is doing the heavy lifting in their marketing because they usually are celebrating the holidays, or they're showcasing something that's in the waiting room, or they're sitting in the chairs as they're, giving some educational spiel. So it's really interesting to me that, marketing really is an inside out job, and everything you do does ultimately culminate in that brick and mortar building experience. At Productive Dentist Academy, we've helped thousands of private practice owners find the clarity inside their data and take control again, starting with a free 60-minute coaching session. Head over to investmentgradepractice.com right now before the next patient sits down to claim your free 60-minute coaching session. That's investmentgradepractice.com. Let's talk about our micro mapping here. This is where we're gonna nerd out with you listeners right now. So Sara and I are both kind of obsessed with these little micro intersections that help you, because Sara comes from an office manager background, and so she's been in the dental practice. You've been in dentistry, what, 26 years? You said?
Yes,
yeah, long time.
Yes.
So I've been in branding for 26 years. Yeah. So we come at this with a lot of, not to toot our own horns, but it's a lot of experience around this. And I have experienced the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to living in marketing. I have been celebrated for doing great marketing campaigns. I have been put down in some pretty horrific ways for, I wanted you to market, you didn't get me the number of XYZ, whatever the end result was. And that, instead of that being disheartening to me, for me, it was a challenge. It was an invitation to understand why that wasn't the case. So I don't like to lose. I want to know why. And over decades of time, everything is an evolution. What I found out is, if you're expecting your marketing to just get you patients in the door and you are not paying attention to what's happening as soon as that unhook happens, when it goes from a potential prospect all the way into, okay, now we signed up, we've scheduled, and we're going to walk in that door, you're going to waste thousands of dollars every year, and you're going to be really frustrated. So I know you and I are very passionate about these micro moments. And flash forward, you guys, you listen to the end, you're going to be able to get our checklist so that you can get your waiting room up to speed, so that your marketing dollars are not having to work as hard and you're being a smarter practice as a result. Should we dive into this, Sara?
Yes, please. You're speaking my love language.
All right. So maybe the first one, well, let's do it. I'm going to call it a throwaway, only because we've talked about it so many times, but
Okay.
this is the 101 floor. Okay. So let's talk about our imagery. So when it comes to
Yes.
marketing, what do you think, Sarah? What should our doctors be doing right now?
Doctors, if you have stock photos, okay, so now I hope you're all picturing right now your website, what that looks like. Again, Regan, I'm so glad that you brought up Chin and how they represent themselves in their external marketing, because again, you are seeing yourself in that practice. And doctors, that's really what patients are doing when they see your external advertising. So whether that's social media or website or whatever that is, the patients are looking, it's almost like the dating game with the patients, but they're looking, hey, is this office right for me? And they're trying to see themselves inside that environment. And so, if you have images of your practice, and doctors, it doesn't have to be 2026 fully decorated practice, but it needs to be something that looks, you know, exactly what it's going to look like when they walk into the practice. That is where we start that journey with them. Is again, we want our patients to know what to expect when they come to our practice. Regan, I mean, you and I've talked about Disneyland in the past. Like we've talked about different experiences. And the biggest differentiating piece between Disneyland and some of those other places are we know what we're going to expect. And then when we get there, we don't mind paying $10 for an amazing churro because we're having the greatest time of our lives, right? The expectations have been met. And that's really what we're creating for our patients through the images that we're using in all of our external marketing.
From a brand experience standpoint, something that I love is I quite faithfully get my hair dyed. It's true. It's not my real color. It used to be circa 30 years ago. So I get my roots done. I make sure that I maintain that. But it's a little bit difficult to see the grow out. And so I'm always really surprised. Like, well, let's be real. Like there's a lot of gray there, but if I, I think it's not too bad. It's all right. And then I go and I get my hair done and I'm like, wow, this is like so different. This looks amazing. Or like, when you have a pair of shoes that you've worn forever and they're fine. And then you get a new pair of shoes and they feel amazing.
Yes.
I think the same is true with your waiting room and you can end up getting a disconnect not just visually, but in other ways when it comes to your waiting room. So I would say another great tip would be go through your Google reviews and give them a read through, see if they mention anything about it, and then look at the photos. So great, you had photos taken, they're not stock photos. And by the way, in the family page on the About Us page, you have your son and your daughter, and that was like 7 years ago. So
Yeah.
try to have either a mystery shopper or if you're able to scrub your eyes, see it with a fresh lens. So is it time to get new photos and have it updated? Or as you walk through into that waiting room area, does it look as fresh and clean when you had the professional photographer come in and take all the photos? Or, are the crumply magazines sitting out? Is there dust on the fake flowers? Like take a clean look at that, because that does make a micro trust or micro break and between your marketing and your waiting room experience.
Yeah. And Reagan, I I have to caution doctors sometimes when they market that they're a high technology modern practice, and then if the patient comes in and you hand them a clipboard with paperwork to fill out, I'm like, oh no, this is not high technology. So doctors, look at what that looks like, right? From the patient experience, ask your team. And doctors, I can tell you, team members can be sometimes brutally honest. But the great news to that is, hey, it gives us opportunities to look at like, oh, shoot, I didn't even think a patient would, view it as that. Or you're right, those fake flowers are pretty dated. Let's find something else we can put in the practice. But, definitely making sure that that patient is coming into the correct expectations. Now we're setting that patient on a really great journey to go through your team and with you to become really what we're looking for, which is a lifelong loyal patient.
Oh man, you talking tech stacks is my love language because every patient intersection point has some sort of a tech stack. Like I can guarantee it, and the waiting room isn't any different. So when it, like, if we're thinking about your marketing, and you've got on your website, that you have that you can schedule online, like that's the opportunity to have, that would reflect the words that you use. So again, brand experience. If you're using words like modern and luxurious and advanced, what does that mean? How do you define that? Is it just the very expensive laser, by the way, that's sitting in the back that is very worthy of celebration, but might not be well understood by the patient itself and how they define modern and luxurious? I think that's really important. Uh, I've had it where I'm really excited to schedule online and it doesn't work. I've also had it where I'm really excited to fill out my forms and it doesn't work. And then I go in, this is not Chingy Wyan. So I go in and they say, the front desk will say, "Oh yeah, we could never get that to work," or "Oh, it's always bugging out," or "Oh," and then the clipboard comes out.
Yeah.
And that to me is definitely a break between what marketing promises and then what's actually delivered. So from an office manager perspective, Sarah, how would you take your team through training with that? Because I know I've been involved in, the own organizations that I've worked in, and introducing technology can be, if it's not like properly accounted for and not given training time, it can just be a what show, not a good.
Yeah. And, technology is amazing until it doesn't work. And then we get so frustrated. But that is exactly. So I like to tell teams, hey, let's have some quality assurance, right? Every so often. So I know when I was an office manager, one of the things that myself, but also the other team members would do is we would take turns looking at different things in the practice from the patient perspective. So if we're talking about the waiting room, I want you guys to walk in to the waiting room like you were a new patient. What does that look like? What does it feel like? Do we have, junk everywhere, or does it feel warm and inviting? Also, making sure that you guys are doing the things that a patient would be doing. So checking website links, maybe checking new patient forms, things like that. Because again, you want to be prepared. If something isn't working, hey, it's all right. We've got it. We're on the phone with whoever, getting things worked, but you never want to have a patient be like, I can't do anything, So I say, make sure that you guys are kind of checking through those processes like a new patient would. And even if you do it maybe once a month, and that's kind of your reminder every time you have a team meeting, to go through a quote unquote patient journey, I think would be a really great thing. Regan, I was also thinking, doctors, take no offense. While, you guys are incredibly important in the practice, I will say your admin team is sitting in the highest seat in your practice for the fact that they are the first interaction with a lot of your patients. They're usually the first phone call. They're the first person that a patient sees when they walk in.
Yeah.
And I think investing in your team, making sure that their phone skills are where they need to be, that they know how to best represent you. If you are advertising that we have financial solutions for our patients, that sort of thing, but then your admin team is maybe not communicating that really well, we're going to have a brand break. Regan, I mean, don't you think that's probably one of the most important things a practice can look at is their front office?
Yeah. No, yeah, you had me out my skin. They're your brand ambassadors. They are your brand ambassadors, and when you have they are the first human that your patients are going to come into contact with. So giving them the proper value is super important. I let's help the admin team feel seen, but also supported in this. So I love that you brought up phones. Phones and signage are two areas where if they're not attuned to the marketing that's being put out there, you're screwing yourself. You are wasting so much money.
Yeah. Okay. Doctors, as a former OM, keeping all the team in the loop for everything that's going on really is something I would say, please make sure your team knows. Again, if we have marketing out there and the team has no idea what it's saying, they're now blindsided when a patient calls to ask about it. So it really needs to be something that the team is aware of. Hey, are we running a new patient special? Are we accepting,
Oh my gosh.
this? Again, these are the conversations that the team needs to be aligned with, because the last thing you want is a new patient calling the practice and I'm like, hold on one second, let me check. Hey, Regan, are we doing that? I didn't know. Oh yeah, looks like we are doing that, right? You want to set your team up for success and you want them to feel confident in those conversations. You want them to be the patient advocate. And you want them to reassure the patient that they called the right place. Hey, we are the dental practice for you. I'm so glad that you found us. And then they're able to offer the support that the patient's looking for.
Where is the proper house for and space for training for that? So say, I like that you said new patient special. That's one, marketing tactic that's likely going to be worked into a campaign, or say a new service like Invisalign is now available. And so even running that one through the chain, there will be additional questions that are going to be asked. How much time do you give your team to really dedicate so that they can get fully up to speed and confident? Like, I think that's the underlying word, and confident, so that when we turn this on, the marketing is going to be received when it hits the front desk and the waiting room.
Yeah, I think whether that's in daily huddles that we're talking about it, but for sure those big team meetings of, hey, this month we have an Invisalign day coming up. Here are the parameters. Here are the expectation. Here is what every role needs to do to either participate or promote this event, right? Because we know it's a full team event. And I think just having that communication with the team and making sure that everyone's on board, it also gives doctors the ability, if there is, I don't know, maybe an objection or maybe something that, we're not seeing, the more eyes that are on something, it just gives different perspectives. So maybe something hasn't come up yet. And then your admin team can relay to the team, hey, I just had a question from a patient about this, right? So again, it just allows you to really push through strategies in the practice that you're really looking to grow, and that it's going to minimize the chaos of team. I know what the chaos looks like, and doctors, I know you're much happier when there is less chaos in the practice. Regan, this also brought up another point that I was just thinking about as we're talking about team conversations. Have you ever had an experience maybe sitting in a waiting room where there were conversations being had that probably shouldn't be had in a waiting room?
Yes.
And
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. Between team members, between patients, there's always been conversations where I think, oh, that probably shouldn't shouldn't be shouldn't be happening.
yeah. Again, there are some times that our practices maybe don't have the room to have, individual consultation rooms or things like that. But doctors, I would remind you that, make sure that you're having conversations with the patients either in the operatories or places that are more private. Patients get really embarrassed sometimes about different things. And especially if we're talking about how do we relate to them, we want to make sure that we can have personalized conversations, not with an audience, right? And then, yes, also let's make sure, while yes, it's great that the team's communicating, let's make sure those conversations, don't affect maybe your patient experience or the patients.
Man, that makes me think of signage. Oddly enough, it makes me think of signage and how people can find their ways with it. So raise your hand if you're driving, raise it safely. Raise your hand if you have felt like you've trained your team. You've told them that there's a new patient special. They should know it, and then magically they forget it. So that happens. Yeah. Welcome to the world of a chief communications officer. What I learned is that they don't hate you and they're not ignoring you. They're not, they are still respecting you, but it takes humans many touches to get something to really sink in. And stick, and so that they can remember it. And that's I think that fine line between yes, I know, or I don't know, or I kind of know, over into confidence. And that definitely plays true with the conversations, like the private conversations. You're going to say that, and I have a feeling that they will forget. And they will say, oh, I knew I should have been talking to Mary Lou, but I ended up, that's just what we always do. So one trick, and I'll be curious, Sara, to hear if you've done this in your own practices as well. Making sure that they have signage up for themselves to understand what marketing is doing. So in the break room, for example, or if you have like even if you have a staff bathroom, because what are they going to do? They're going to sit there for a second. They're going to look at something. Is that an opportunity? I would use that as an opportunity to say, hey, by the way, remember we talked about that new patient special? It's going out on the website where this is how we handle it.
Yeah. So I love that you bring up the bathroom. Yes, it's great for a team, but also doctors. One of the best places for marketing is in your bathroom for that exact same reason. Now, obviously we don't want it to be tacky, but having some little signage, maybe having, something up on the wall. Again, I promise you, doctors, you put something in your bathroom, the doctor or the patients will ask you about it. It sounds weird. It sounds cheesy, but it is true. Regan, I would also say, going back to the waiting room, make sure, doctors, as you think about your current waiting room, what marketing opportunities are there? Like, so often I think we forget about technology that you probably already have in your practice. So if you have a TV in the waiting room, it's really easy for, and I say that as a marketer, it's real easy, doctors, but, it is one of those things that you have the opportunity to maybe have a little slideshow, and on each of those slides promotes things within the practice. My guess is that most of your patients don't even understand all the services that you offer, maybe different things that are coming
They
up.
don't. It's for sure they don't. For sure they don't. You can be college educated and still not know things about your oral health. That's brilliant.
Yeah. And so having even the TV in your waiting rooms with that information, having anything out that obviously doesn't look tacky, that, blends with your brand, right? Since that's what we're really talking about today, but that's an opportunity. Um, I would love for doctors to do this little test, which is how many times a day throughout the entire practice. So ask every team member, does a patient say to you, are you accepting new patients? Because they simply don't know. And if we're not having conversations with them saying, hey, we'd love to see more patients like you, they just don't know that you are seeing referrals. And that's why they're asking. So I think it's good to make sure that we have that stuff, up, because our patients, they just need to be educated.
Your energy will rub off on others, and it can feel scary because it feels like sales. So announcing things can feel like sales. But I walked into a practice not that long ago, and they had a sign on like the little check-in counter that said, had like little like confetti like images on it, and it said now accepting new patients. Now I can see how most people wouldn't put something like that up in a waiting room because you're already there because you're a patient. But that spreads word of mouth. That is taking your marketing, and it is now make sure from the branding perspective, if you're using an image, right? You've got little confetti or whatever it is that's on that sign. Put it on your social media, share it, put it on your website, make sure that it is congruent. It takes spaced repetition for that brain to really lock in and have a congruent experience that builds trust. So that it's real estate. You don't have to clutter your front desk, but be strategic about it. What are you talking about? What do you want? And then communicate that. So signage, I think the TV is absolutely brilliant because of course you can put those slides up. It's not that it's like easy or hard. It's possible. So if it's possible, and if you have a TV, give an agency a call. Exactly.
Make
it happen.
Yeah, you guys, I'll walk you through how to do it. Just call me. I'm giving you the steps. But Regan, I also want to touch on something else that was top of mind for me recently talking to a practice about, which was, yes, we want that extension of our brand in the waiting room to be exactly what we want patients to feel, right? So if you're advertising modern technology and comfortable care and friendly team and all those different things, I think that is fantastic. However, if we also have at the very first stop that the patient makes in that new patient experience is maybe signage that says something like, all copays are due right now at the time of service. While I completely 100% agree with that statement, doctors, hear me loud and clear. Yes, you need to be paid. Yes, they need to pay for their services. However, from a patient perspective, now you're putting that top of mind to the patient of like, it comes across a little abrasive and they're like, oh, like they want to make sure they get paid, which of course you do. However, again, it's about that communication. And now what that's telling the patient is not compassionate care, friendly team, modern technology. What that's telling the patient is they want to be paid today. So it's putting now finances at the very front of everything else now that comes behind it. And really what we want is, again, that patient experience to set the tone for everything else that comes. So by the time they get to the treatment coordinator or yourself or your financial person and they say, this is how much the treatment's going to cost, the patient's like, great, where do I sign? Because I see value in this experience.
You know what I've done with this? I love that you shared that particular example. Take those messages, like really do get a blind eye, go out, find if there's signage like that, and then compare it to what's on your website right now, or compare it to how you talk about things in the social media aspect. I mean, there's some incredible dentists on TikTok tearing it up right now. They're humorous, they're hilarious. And if I were to show up to one of those practices and am met with that, right, it is a necessity, but a necessity can still come across in a warm and compassionate tone. Or whatever tone it is that matches the messaging that you're already doing. That is a really great little micro tweak that you can make. And it's ridiculous, you guys, how those little micro tweaks make someone feel seen and held and cared for. When you get all of those aligned just right, the road to case acceptance is just so much easier. And doctor, it's nice to make your job not as hard. I know it feels like something that's minimal, but it really adds up. You have to think about it like investing dollars in the bank. It adds up, and by the time they get to that treatment share, it's a whole new game, and it's one you have a much higher chance of winning.
Yeah. Regan, going back to Google reviews, when you said just barely, gather some of that data, doctors, did you know that in Google reviews, you can actually type in keywords? So for example,
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
So when you're when you pull up your Google reviews, if you type in compassionate, or if you type in, trust, yeah, it will come up and it will actually show you how often that word is mentioned in a Google review. So doctor, I have a tip.
Okay, wait, you're going to show me this after we get off the recording, because do you know how many brand audits I have done over the last decade where I have to scroll endlessly and count, like find the word patterns myself?
Yes.
Ridiculous.
Yes, it's there. It's there.
How
So
nice.
doctors, if you have key characteristics or maybe things that you're advertising on your website, so if you're advertising trusting environment or trust, I challenge you to go to your Google reviews, type that word in and see how many times that word comes up. If that comes up multiple times, then guess what, doctors? You're hitting that brand congruency in that trusting department. If you're advertising trust and yet that's never in any of your Google reviews, that is such a good opportunity for you to say, holy cow, okay, how do we then create those trusting moments for our patients so that they actually feel that way? Google reviews are amazing feedback because the patients really are honest and they'll tell you exactly, how they feel, how the experience was. So that is the best way to gauge the branding element of your marketing.
We've covered a ton. If you've made it this far, you guys, congratulations. Email Sara, Sara, at phoenixdentalagency.com, and you can get your very own waiting list checklist.
Yeah. I'm happy. So Regan, you and I were on a mission, right? We're on a mission to help doctors and teams. You guys, I come from where you are. I want to give you the tips and tricks that I wish I had being in the dental practice. And so I want to support you. So yes, please email me. I'm happy to send it to you. And you can kind of go through it with your team and look at it and see how you guys are doing. And I'm always there to give feedback and, support as you need it.
Well, thank you so much, Sara. This has been a blast, listeners. Thank you for tuning in. If you have feedback for Sara and I, you can email Sara at phoenixdentalagency.com or myself, Regan, Regan, at productivedentist.com. We're really open to it. We really are doing good while doing good this year, moving it forward. And we are here to share everything that we know so that you don't spend so much on marketing and you actually make it work for you really well. And you create a patient experience that gets you more patients, the patients that you deserve, the ones that you want, the ones that are ready to say yes to care. So that's why we're here. And thanks so much for tuning in.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for joining us on Everyday Practices Dental Podcast. It would mean the world to me if you could leave us a like or a review on iTunes or go to Productive Dentist Academy through Google and leave us a review there. We are here each week to talk about what's possible when you leave your practice with clarity and courage. If you are ready to build a business that supports your life and not the other way around, investment grade practice coaching powered by Productive Dentist Academy can help. Visit investmentgradepractice.com to schedule your free 60-minute coaching session so you can start designing the practice and lifestyle you've been dreaming about all along.